was doing research, pleasantly surprised to see that children who had resilience, the ability to bounce back, also had strong integrity or a moral code. They knew what they stood for because you had planted it in them. That's how powerful you are. One of the things you can do that you may not be doing nearly enough is simply take a moment right now, and maybe that's on number 4, to pretend your child is now grown up and you're at a family reunion and you're watching him or her. What are the moral character traits you hope above all else that you see in your child? You see, those don't come automatically, and they're not born with those. They arrive because you've planted them by lots and lots of little conversations, not big ones. Maybe the most important thing is to write down number 4 is here's the trait I want to see. Because a lot of times we don't intentionally think this through. And then parenting, they grow up so fast and there's no takeaways and take backs. But here's some things you can do. And I call it TEACH. You ready? T is target the character traits you want most in your children. You're not born with them, you develop them. Once you write that down, now you can do E. And E is start looking for examples of people who emulate it. Adults are behaving pretty badly these days. Look for people who emulate those traits, or here's a real key, make sure it's in yourself. If you want to make sure that your child turns out with self-control, then ask yourself how you doing when the bank calls and tells you you're overdrawn. Be the example you want to see in your child. A is accentuated, but accentuated naturally. It's not a lecture. Okay, let's talk about empathy because it's 6 o'clock. That goes over like a balloon. Instead, just talk about it and weave it in. You can find books that talk about the traits that you're addressing. You can find movies that find clips of them. You can talk about, oh my gosh, did you notice that child right there? He's being so kind because look, he's sharing, he's taking turns. That's what we are in our family, right? We're accentuating. See us what Harvard University just discovered we don't do nearly enough. We're great at catching the kid when they're doing it wrong, but make sure you catch the child when they're doing what you want them to do and praise it. Thank you for being kind, and then use the word because you opened the door for mom, or thank you for stopping and waiting for grandma to first start her dinner before you started. Did you see the smile on her face? If you keep praising it, the child will know what the heck they like and what they want you to do and what they are proud of when you give them that. And H is just highlight why it's valuable, why you think that character trait matters. Aristotle years ago told us that excellence is made up of character. It's why I chose character traits when I was looking for thrivers because I wanted our kids to have character. But I also wanted to have the character traits that seem to be ones that matter most of bouncing back. So that's what we're looking at. TEACH. Maybe you can just take a moment and say, where do I want to be on that one right now? Let's keep moving. Curiosity. Oh, how I love this one. This is so critical right now for today's resilient kids because curiosity doesn't mean you're raising a Albert Einstein, but it means that the child thinks he can think outside the box and everybody's going to make a mistake. But if a kid is derailed by the mistake and gives up, he's not going to have the perseverance that he needs to be able to handle life, but we can instill it in our children. Curiosity, again, is something that we can cultivate. And here's the most important way to begin. The first thing is from this moment on, make a pledge that when your child makes a mistake, you will not immediately tell him, here's what you should do next time. I know it's easier to give them the here's what to do, but the problem is they become dependent on us. And the highest correlation to a thriver to me is a child who has agency. I got this, mom. I can do it. Now, he's not going to be able to do it at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but you keep doing the what could you do next time? So S is say the problem. P is let's be just positives. And for just the next minute, let's think of all the things you could have done differently next time. Keep a poker face. Some of the things your kids are going to come up with is off the charts, but that's okay. Keep going. A is keep adding on options. Add them on. What's another idea? What's another idea? What's another idea? Research finds that rapid firing ideas, not, all right, let's stop and think about that one, actually derails creativity. But when you're brainstorming, and you can do this around the dinner hour, right before you go to bed, when your child comes home and he's upset, it really will help him generate ideas. So he begins to think there's no problem so great that can't be solved. It's someplace inside my head. And then K is you keep on going and storming until stop. Maybe 1 minute is over and you got a 1 minute sand timer of all the ideas. Which is the one you feel most comfortable doing? Okay, that's the one to try. Now let's role play for just a minute if they're little. What's that going to look like when you're trying to talk to your friend tomorrow and use this new idea? Or when they're bigger, that's a good idea. Think about it. And then think about what's the one thing you want to do differently next time. What they've discovered is that parents, if we keep doing this and we don't rescue them, we don't sugarcoat them, and we don't bubble wrap them, we're more likely to raise a bounce back child. Here's another thing you may want to do. We're discovering, and this is very, very disturbing, that our children actually are risk adverse. And that is, they're afraid to think outside the box. Homeschooling can be a wonderful opportunity for you to have some deep, deep kind of thinking so that you think outside the box, but you don't derail. No, that won't work or that will work. Here's what they've actually discovered: kids who are young, you notice how they drive you crazy because they ask 50,000 why questions? That's curiosity. Keep the questions coming. And then when they get a little older, don't give them the answer. That's a great question. Let's go figure out what the answer is. Or here's the three other things you can do as they get older. A is feel free to assert yourself. Be respectful. But if you disagree with something we're saying, and these are things that it's okay to disagree with. Maybe you've got certain limits and curfews, and that's not a disagreeable one. But what are ones? Then assert yourself, say it, but say it in a respectful tone. R is give the reason. Give the reason why you think it's important. And then E is give me the evidence why we should change. What we have found is that you're actually parents going to be raising deeper thinkers who are less risk adverse, who are afraid to think outside the box. And that's what the world needs. Curiosity. That's what number 5 is. We've got 2 more. Get ready. And then we've got questions forever as long as you want. But let's keep looking at one other idea that you can do and keep it going. First of all, perseverance is probably the one that most parents really want to know. Why isn't he as motivated as he was war? And how do I push him even more? Perseverance is highly correlated to resilience. And I want you to first take a moment and let's talk about something serious. Serious is perseverance is number 6, but it's very hard to persevere if you don't have self control. Or it's very hard to persevere if you don't have confidence in yourself. What I discovered when I was writing Thrivers is what I call now the multiplier effect. For the longest time, sometimes in parenting, we think that there was one trait that mattered all of all else, and we were just going to raise the persevering kid. But what I began to see is that all 7 of these matter because you don't know what kind of problem is going to be the one that your child comes up against. And when that problem comes, you want your child to be able to bounce back and say, what else can I do differently next time? But the other thing is, you need perseverance to have self control. You need them to go together. Empathy works with number 1 or 2. So let's look at perseverance for just a minute and let's see how we can make a difference on helping our children to be able to bounce back. And there's a lot of things. First of all, some of the best research in the world is coming out at Stanford University with somebody named Carol Dweck. She wrote a book that you may be aware of about growth mindset. And she found that one of the best ways to boost their children's perseverance, oh, parents, please listen to this and please write this down because this is a habit that you need to do, is stop praising the child for the end product. What did you get? What was your score? What was your grade? Instead, what Carol Dweck discovered is that if you want a child to have agency, they need to realize they can make a difference on their own success. And instead, here's what she did. First, she went into classrooms and she watched, this is middle school, and she watched two teachers who had students who had very, very high IQs. Now, both teachers were teaching algebra, and both teachers were teaching exactly the same lessons from the same book, but different classrooms. Now, when they all started in the same, in different, two different classrooms, all the kids were at the same level. But what the researchers were really interested in is in a very short amount of time, this classroom, the kids in that classroom began to excel. They began to get higher and higher grades as opposed to this. Now, the teachers are teaching exactly the same way, the same content. What's the difference? What she found is that the only single difference was this teacher was not emphasizing the what was your score and what did you get. This teacher was emphasizing effort. And that meant, hey, yesterday you were here. Today you're here. Yesterday you were here. Today you're here. What she found is that it's kind of like the stepladder approach. You need to figure out where your child is capable of right now. And then you keep teaching them one step more and one step more. You don't go to, oh, now well, we have to get the perfect grade here. What you do is help them realize that you do it in little stepping stones. Let me give you an example on this. There's some fabulous research on Olympic athletes who win gold medals. Why? What they did is that they realized they all have tremendous talents, but they have different coaches and different coaching styles. And what they discovered is that one of the keys that really good coaches do, and that's what you can be as a parent, is keep emphasizing here's where you were yesterday and what how many seconds you swam. So today let's go for here. When your child gets upset by a problem and he wants to rip up the paper, you don't. Instead, you just fold it and say, so let's just do this problem. Let's just do this row. And then you keep adding and adding and adding. Here's another thing they discovered, and it's just simply called the rubber band test. Your goal is to gently stretch your child and keep stretching their abilities and stretching their abilities because you want them to keep getting better and better and better. But you don't want to stretch them so much that you snap them, right? Because once you snap it, it gets too hard and then the child gets overwhelmed. Let me give you an example that's personal. I had a couple of piano teachers when I was growing up. My mom decided I was going to take piano. And my first piano teacher at age 6 was named Mr. White, and he drove me to early retirement at age 6. Mr. White was a great musician, but not necessarily a teacher. What he did was want me to be perfect. And so I'd play a piece until I could be one bar from the end. And if I made one mistake, everything else was perfect. But one bar from the end, nope, we got to start all over again. What do you think that would happen to me as a music player? All I would do is think about the mistake. That's what's happening to a lot of our kids. All they do is think about their mistakes, so they're not thriving. What we want them to do is realize they can by emphasizing the effort. Now, here's what my mom did. Mr. White was no longer my teacher. She hired Mrs. Thompson, and Mrs. Thompson had a whole different, oh, yay, Mrs. Thompson philosophy to life. Her philosophy was, Michelle, what's your stumbler? What's the one little thing that's getting in your way? You seem to like you're really upset with the piano piece. Oh, it's that bar there. Well, let's practice that over and over and over. See, you're getting better and better and better. What she did is she just identified where my worries were. And then she'd practice those one little things with me. And that's what I suggest you do with your children. Practice so they get better and better and better, but practice so they could feel comfortable. And that's what a growth mindset is. Remember, emphasize the effort. And when they get overwhelmed, look at the one little thing that's getting in their way. And what you'll do is you'll keep stretching them and stretching them without snapping them. What a difference. And of course, they're going to say, but I'm not, I can't get it. And when they do that, your comeback lines are, you can't get it yet. You're almost there. You're getting closer. Before you were here and now you're here. What you're seeing is the research from Stanford broken down into smaller and smaller nuggets. So, parents, you can make such an enormous difference on your children's lives. I don't care if the child is 2 or 23. You can use the same strategy, and it's called the growth mindset model. So, go back to your where you are here. That's number 6. Is there one little thing you want to remember? I hope you're writing down simple things. And maybe you're writing down, I want to find out more about that, or that's the chapter I want to read more about. Because I would also suggest when you read Thrivers, don't read it from beginning to end, but instead go to the one chapter you want to start with. By the way, the next question is going to be, where should I start? Which of these 7 strengths is the most important to begin with? I'd say take a little side trip and ask yourself, which is your strength already? Which is your strength? Because if you can identify your strength, chances are you're modeling it, and chances are your kids are getting it. And then you can also begin to say, maybe I need to start with confidence so I can help my child just begin to thrive. If you always start with, are all going to work on self control because you all need it, it kind of goes off over the negative. You want it to be positive, and that's what good teachers do. Let's keep moving along because this is my favorite. Get ready. Optimism. And I think it's number 7, but it's what every kid and a grown up in the world needs above all else. Now, here's the thing about optimism, it means you have hope, it means that you think it's going to be okay. And what we're finding is that many of our kids have reached this point of helplessness and hopelessness for a couple of reasons. And I want you to get into the shoes of your children. One of the big reasons for the decline in optimism right now is the doom and gloom that's on the TV. Would you do me a favor? Would you be selective on what you let your children watch? Watch some things as a family. But if you notice that your child is beginning a little bit anxious over, oh my gosh, it's the late night news again, then do us a favor also and do yourself a favor. And that is what I did is I did something profound, got a newspaper prescription. And what I begin to do on that subscription is read the news flatline as opposed to viewing it on the image. And here's the first takeaway for this. There's a reason why commentators always say, be careful because in the next few minutes, it's going to be viewing some very disturbing images. Those disturbing images can take down empathy and take down hope, but they're not as big of an issue. They're not as big of an issue when you're dealing with news. So here's some other things that you may want to keep in mind, just some things. You can teach optimism, and there's some points that you may want to consider. Number 1, do you have a family mantra? And the family mantra, these are just a few, they've actually discovered is that when you have a bad day, you can actually say, that's okay, I'll get through it. Or it's okay, next time it'll be okay. If you keep saying the same mantra over and over again, what begins to happen is your voice becomes your children's voice and they copy it. What we do know is that optimism goes down and pessimism goes up. Negative thinking can take over unless your child has some kind of a voice he can talk to on that negative thinking. That negative thinking parent is absolutely deadly to a outlook in terms of thriving. So maybe the first thing you're going to do on number 7 is choose a mantra that's upbeat. I don't care what it is. Maybe each child can come up with their own, or you can vote as a family what your mantra is going to be. A number 2 idea. I think this is really important to keep in mind too. They did some very interesting research, and I hope you all do this tonight or tomorrow. And they discovered that if your family talks about how you are a resilient family, your children are more likely to copy that and say, I'm a resilient family. Now, how does that work? It works that you don't just talk about your current family, but you start talking instead about grandparents and great grandparents and what they endured. And think about that, from depressions to wars, what they went through. And then you talk to your children and you say, but that's the kind of family you're part of. You're so lucky because we're a resilient family and we'll get this through this too. If you have a child who's always concerned and anxious about, oh, the new outbreak and what's going to be the new thing from smallpox to measles right now, then what you do, research says, not for all kids, but for that particular child, is you show him, hey, we had the Spanish flu, or we had the bubonic plague, or we had polio, and we got through it. What I'm trying to do is give you ideas of helping kids be able to bounce back. Resilience. Do you know something about it? And these are the most important things I want you to remember about it. It's not a program. So it's not something you say, I'm going to go down and I'm going to buy that workbook and we're going to go through the whole thing together. What you're trying to do is be a family that creates more of a process. So once you know these 7 traits, and what I've actually been doing is you've been writing down the skills to teach the 7 strengths. You figure out which one skill, maybe it's deep breathing, or maybe it's I'm going to talk about effort, or maybe it's let's find your little stumbler. That's a skill. And what you're doing is you're actually keep modeling the same skill like we're strong, we can get through this. What begins to happen is if you repeat it enough, it becomes the habit and that becomes what I call a resilient bank account. You see, it's kind of like savings for a rainy day. You keep working on these skills and working on them and working on you don't know what kind of adversity is going to hit your child. Hopefully nothing does. But unfortunately, chances are something will. When the challenge comes, the child who's got that skill that he can pull back. So that's the other thing. Everything we're talking about today is made, not innate. Thrivers are made, not born, is my favorite just line for you. It means we can teach this to it. It's not a fixed window. Some of you are going, oh my gosh, it's too late. He's already 25. It's never too late. It's not too late for any of us either. Resilience is one of the hottest new courses for adults these days. If we start early, it's just a lot easier. It's no set window and it's ongoing. The other thing is, I saw when I started to write Thrivers is everybody always thought there was one trait. No, it's multiple traits, all of these. But the most important thing, it's the takeaway, is that it's not a worksheet that does it. It's a caring adult, you, that models it. And now, do you see that star over there? That star is from everything we just talked about. Is there one thing you want to try? What's the one thing that you think is, okay, that's the one I want to do with my family? And that's the one I'm going to keep working on a minute a day when everybody's relaxed until I can see we made a difference. Write that one down. Then do me one final favor. Circle the one thing you want to try a minute a day for the next 21 days. And folks, that's how we're going to raise up a population of thrivers. It's never too late.